Bitwarden Password Manager, designed to help millions of users create strong, unique passwords across all devices and accounts during Data Privacy Week and beyond. Available at bitwarden.com.
I'm David Brancaccio in Los Angeles. The new Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, says when it comes to interest rates, he's less worried about what the Federal Reserve will do and more focused on one particular number, the 10-year Treasury yield. Explanation is required. Here's Marketplace's Nova Safo.
The Federal Reserve sets short-term rates, which ripple throughout the economy, but a whole host of factors can influence another key number, the 10-year Treasury yield, which itself affects consumer borrowing costs. In an interview on Fox Business, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he and President Trump are focused on lowering that number.
We cut the spending, we cut the size of government, we get more efficiency in government, and we're going to go into a good interest rate cycle.
Selling less government debt could lower the interest rates the government has to offer for that debt. The Treasury Department could also change the mix of its debt offerings, something Bessent accused his predecessor of doing, which Janet Yellen denied. Investors also send yields higher or lower based on where they think inflation is headed, and tariff policies have complicated that picture. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
That 10-year interest rate, that yield, is up at 4.43% now. S&P futures are up just slightly. As of tomorrow, the Trump administration is putting almost all employees of the U.S. Agency for International Development on leave. A rally on Capitol Hill yesterday is part of an emerging pushback. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer was there.
USAID supporters at the rally held signs saying things like USAID saves lives and Save USAID. They chanted, USA! USA! Heard speeches from members of Congress and worried about USAID's unfinished work. Atul Gawande was USAID Assistant Administrator for Global Health in the Biden administration. He says the skeleton crew left at USAID isn't funding even the humanitarian aid Secretary of State Marco Rubio exempted from the Trump administration's freeze. Gawande only knows of one aid project that's actually been funded to help stem an Ebola outbreak in Uganda. But he says staff on the ground aren't allowed to talk to the World Health Organization, which is coordinating the effort.
And that is still preventing a full response to an Ebola outbreak that has now exposed more than 250 people in Uganda.
And it's not just Ebola. Steffi-Anne Dulapre was a contract worker at USAID, but was furloughed about 10 days ago.
We have dengue fever happening. We have Mpox happening. We are in a slurry of multi-infectious disease outbreaks around our globe.
The big concern is people who aren't getting treatment for those diseases, says Angie Garvey, another USAID contractor who was also let go last week.
People are going to die. People are already dying. Life-saving work is done at USAID.
Garvey says COVID taught us that diseases don't respect borders. The State Department didn't respond to a request for comment by deadline. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, aiming to help save time by offering smart business buying solutions so there's more time to focus on growing the business and less time doing the admin. More at amazonbusiness.com. And by The Economist, devoted to providing independent journalism that makes sense of the news shaping the world. More at economist.com or with The Economist app, newsletters, and podcasts.
Climate change is driving up business insurance for people and firms in the path of increasingly hot fires, also for places that depend on cold. Insurance premiums for ski resorts are up more than 150% in a decade, according to an industry association. From Fairleigh, Vermont, Daniel Ackerman has more.
For more than a decade, John Marsden has spent his winters ice skating on the 4-mile Lake Moray skating trail here in Fairleigh. He likes to come after sunset.
And you can skate in the moonlight on the lake, and it's like nothing else in this world.
The skating is the main wintertime draw for nearby Lake Moray Resort, and many of the skaters here call the trail almost spiritual. But I had to ask resort owner Mark Avery, who maintains the trail, about something decidedly not spiritual: insurance.
Ugh.
It sounds like that's been a headache.
Yes. So we've been running the trail for 14 years, and never once did I think about insurance. We just went out there and plowed and watched the community just thoroughly enjoy the trail.
Avery says getting insured was never a problem. But when he needed to renew last year, his insurer called him up.
And they said, we would love to insure you, but, of course, there's always a but. We're not going to cover the skate trail. There's too much liability there.
These days, insurance headaches like this are common in winter recreation. Kelly Sinclair runs the Highlands Nordic Ski Center in Ontario. She says in the last 5 years,
our premiums have doubled, and we are a facility that has had 0 claims.
Industry-wide, though, claims are increasing, which raises premiums for everyone. And warmer winters with less reliable snow and ice aren't the only culprits, says Scott Brandy, president of the ski areas of New York.
Fires, hurricanes, windstorms, all of the above have dramatically impacted what ski areas are paying.
Back at the Lake Moray skating trail, Mark Avery understands his business is kind of at the whims of the weather.
Climate change is real. It's increasing liability. You have to work with it and come up with a creative solution.
This year, Avery transferred ownership of the trail to the town, which has a municipal policy for ice rinks. And that means the trail is up and running again. And after a long cold snap, conditions are just right. In Fairleigh, Vermont, I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
And in what could be seen as a sign of the times, the burger chain Carl's Jr. seems to be stepping back into the era when the culture found it okay to put up what were called girly calendars in the workplace. The burger chain is out with a Super Bowl-timed ad featuring a scantily clad influencer where you don't have to be a professor of semiotics to pick up sexualized references. Contrast this to a headline from back in 2017 that had read, Carl's Jr. says goodbye to sexy burger ads, back when objectification was out. Defender sees some parody in the current ad, a back reference to Carl's Burgers and Bikinis years. Carl's Jr. is CKE Restaurant Holdings of Tennessee, which also owns Hardee's in Los Angeles. I'm David Brancaccio, Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Support for WNYC comes from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, helping public radio advance journalistic excellence in the digital age. The Knight Foundation believes informed and engaged communities are essential for healthy democracy. More at kf.org.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, how DEI programs became Donald Trump's public enemy #1.
Now, DEI is the boogeyman for anything. If there's a terrible tragedy, if there is something going wrong in any part of your life, then you can bet that somehow or another DEI is there.
Staff writer Jelani Cobb joins me next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour. Saturday mornings at 10 on 93.9 FM or on the WNYC app.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM New York.
Good morning. The Trump administration's offer to federal employees, resign now and keep your pay and benefits through September, has not gone over well with some of the workforce.
I don't know anybody who's considering taking it who wasn't already planning on retiring.
Well, today is the deadline to decide. I'm Michael Hill. It's Morning Edition from NPR and WNYC in New York. The White House looks to deport international students who protested Israel. Critics call it censorship of protected speech. A new form of bird flu infects dairy cows in Nevada and raises concerns among scientists. In an effort to restore a nearly extinct tree in Brooklyn bears fruit. Well, nuts. It's Thursday, February 6th. The news is next.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Hurst. Israel's defense minister is telling the military to prepare to implement President Trump's plan to relocate Palestinians from Gaza. NPR's Jerome Sokolowski has more.
Defense Minister Israel Katz says the military should prepare exit options by land, sea, and air so that anyone who wishes to can leave for, quote, any country willing to accept them. He says Spain, Norway, Ireland, and other countries that have criticized Israel's actions during its war against Hamas should take them in. Quote, their hypocrisy will be exposed if they refuse to do so, Katz said in a statement. Spain's Foreign Minister José Manuel Álvarez responded on Spanish national radio. Spain makes its own decisions. No third party should tell it what to do. Álvarez added that Gaza must be part of a future Palestinian state. Jerome Sokolovsky, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The Trump administration has put most of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, workforce around the world on administrative leave, and it's frozen its budget. Trump advisor Elon Musk says the agency is full of corruption and waste. NPR's Gabriela Emanuel says Ukraine is a big recipient of USAID after Russia invaded the country.
Ukraine is among the top recipients of U.S. aid. It goes to things like rebuilding infrastructure after it's attacked by Russia, or seeds and fertilizer to build up the agriculture sector to get more exports. The Trump administration has issued some narrow waivers, but most things have stopped. For example, NPR's Ukraine Bureau has confirmed disruptions in the delivery of HIV/AIDS medication.
NPR's Gabriela Emanuel. Total foreign assistance in 2023 was $66 billion. And since President Trump took office last month, a flurry of executive orders and actions have upended federal spending directed by Congress. NPR's Deirdre Walsh has more.
Recent moves by Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency unit to shutter programs at the U.S. Agency for International Development raise questions about whether Congress is ceding its power of the purse. House Speaker Mike Johnson says he's a fierce advocate of the legislative branch's constitutional duty, but said Wednesday the president also has authority to review programs.
The executive branch of government in our system has the right to evaluate how executive branch agencies are operating.
Most congressional Republicans have defended Musk and the president's actions so far. But an upcoming debate on legislation to avoid a partial government shutdown next month could challenge the party's willingness to allow the executive to effectively take over the process. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, the Capitol.
This is NPR News.
And this is WNYC, 32 with snow at 4 minutes past 7. Good morning, I'm Michael Hill. Snow, sleet, and freezing rain already falling in some parts of the area. New York City Sanitation Commissioner Javier Lohan says some of the more than 700 salt spreaders are on the roads this morning.
The freezing rain is what's being factored in here, where it could create some icy conditions, and that could be dangerous. So, that's why we're going to start spreading salt right away.
Lohan says New Yorkers should avoid roads and use the subway instead, and property owners are responsible for clearing sidewalks of snow and ice and face fines of $250 if they don't. The city's public hospital system is sending out messages telling patients to keep going to their doctors regardless of their immigration status. Health and Hospitals has been trying to allay people's fears since President Trump took office, promising mass deportations. But in an internal email, the health system instructed employees not to, quote, actively help a person avoid being found by ICE. Sean Petty is a nurse at Jacoby Hospital in the Bronx. Petty says the health system should actively protect patients.
I think the guidelines acquiesce too much to the legal right of ICE to be in our facilities, and I think that's a mistake.
Legally, hospitals only have to allow ICE agents in if they have a federal judge-signed warrant, and one law professor has told us those are very rare. One of New York City's most renowned colleges is about to get a crash course on how to be a landlord. Cooper Union owns the iconic Chrysler Building. For years, the school has outsourced most property management responsibilities, but last week the college won a legal battle to kick out the current management. Real estate broker Ruth Culp-Haper says it won't be easy to manage the Chrysler Building.
It's a New York City icon. However, it has one major problem, which is it's very old.
Cooper Union says it's working with real estate firms to manage the property and figure out a long-term plan for the building. New reports say New York Mets first baseman Pete Alonso and the team have agreed to a $54 million 2-year contract. Taking a look at your commute this morning. Delays on southbound 2 and 3 and northbound 4 trains. L trains are running slow entering and leaving Canarsie Rockaway Parkway. Multiple car crashes in New Jersey. Alternate side parking suspended in New York City and Jersey City. 32 with snow now. More of that coming with mixed rain and freezing rain and rain later today.
Support for NPR comes from Workday. Workday is an HR and finance platform for forward thinkers, dedicated to propelling organizations, workforces, and industries into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, what does it mean that government agencies like the CDC and the National Institutes of Health are scrubbing certain words and data sets from their websites? An epidemiologist explains why public health professionals are worried and why data and clear communication is vital for everyone's health. Plus, New Yorker writer Adam Gopnik examines his insomnia. The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Amy Martinez in Los Angeles, California. This is decision day for millions of federal employees who find themselves at a so-called fork in the road.
That is the phrase the Trump administration put into an email telling federal workers they can stay or go. Their unions have said it's not really much of a decision, asserting that the offer that looks like a buyout really isn't.
NPR labor correspondent Andrea Hsu joins us now. Andrea, can we ballpark how many federal employees have told the administration that they're going to quit?
Yeah, well, last night we were hearing it was more than 40,000, or about 2% of the federal workforce, and growing. Now, remember this offer to resign by today and still keep your pay and benefits until the end of September? It's gone out to more than 2 million federal employees, including people in the VA and the FDA, the Department of Education, even the CIA. So you can imagine these numbers could climb. But that said, a lot of people seem to be wary. I met a federal employee, David Casserly, at a rally outside the Labor Department. He's worked there for 3.5 years. And I asked him if he's considered resigning, and here's what he said.
No, never. I don't know anybody who's considering taking it who wasn't already planning on retiring.
And I've also heard that people who have been fully remote and can't or don't want to comply with Trump's demand that all federal workers return to the office full time, that they are also considering taking this deal.
Okay. Now, for the federal employees who do accept, what exactly are they agreeing to?
Well, it's really hard to answer that with any precision because so many different versions of the deal have been sent out since last week. So the first email that went out 9 days ago only said that people who agree to resign now don't have to comply with the return to office orders. Many people took that to mean they'd still have to work, but they could work from home. But then soon after, the Office of Personnel Management put out an FAQ that said, no, you're not expected to work at all and you'll still get paid. And then this week, agencies sent out these sample contract agreements that changed the script again and said, actually, you do have to work through the end of February. And these sample agreements also had a lot of legalese that said things like, by accepting this deal, you're waiving your right to any action against the government if things don't go how you expected.
So it just sounds like there's a lot of things that aren't clear, right, with all this. Now, the offer, though, Andrea, is it even legal? I mean, what could happen to federal employees who actually take it?
Well, as mentioned, several unions that represent federal employees have sued, saying the offer isn't legal. They've asked a federal court in Boston to halt this whole thing until the government comes up with a policy that is lawful. And there's a hearing today at 1, so we'll know more later today. One thing that the unions have pointed out is that federal agencies are only funded through March 14th, and there's a law that says agencies can't obligate funds that Congress hasn't yet approved. So unions and attorneys have been warning those who take the offer that there's no guarantee that they'll get the money that's been promised.
For the employees who decide to stay, what happens to them?
Well, from the start, they've been told their jobs are not guaranteed, and there are going to be significant changes. Agencies are going to be downsized. There are going to be layoffs. Everyone has to come into the office. It's really reminiscent of Elon Musk's resignation offer to Twitter employees, which was also titled Fork in the Road. The message to them, back then was, if you stay, you'll need to be extremely hardcore. Here, federal workers have been told we're going to insist on excellence and we expect you to be loyal. But there's a really big difference between this, the government, and Twitter. Federal employees take an oath to be loyal to the U.S. Constitution, not to a particular president or administration.
NPR's Andrea Hsu, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Let's take a careful look at the president's proposal for the United States to take over Gaza. He surprised allies and enemies alike this week by saying the U.S. will take ownership of the territory, remove close to 2 million residents, and redevelop it as a coastal paradise. Trump said the U.S. would do what was necessary to make this happen, including, if necessary, sending U.S. troops. And he said he was calling for this after careful thought. U.S. officials have spent the time since clarifying what they say he meant. Here is his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, speaking yesterday at the White House.
The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza.
But Israel has already seized on the part of Trump's idea that involves removing Palestinians. You may have heard our hourly newscast saying that the Israeli defense minister told the Israeli army to prepare exit options. Is any of this legal? David Sheffer joins us next. He's the former ambassador at large for war crimes issues in the Clinton administration. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
Under what circumstances could Israel, or the United States for that matter, make Palestinians leave?
Well, there are two ways to do this. If the intention is to do so forcibly and coercively, then a lot of tripwires in international law appear. And I'll just quickly tick them off.
Yeah.
Non-use of force, forcible displacement of a civilian population, right of self-determination, violations of the occupation law provisions of the Geneva Fourth Convention. And then finally, the wild card in this is Hamas. If there's continued armed conflict with Hamas on the ground,